Thank you very much, Party Chairman Mr. Franklin Khan, Deputy Political Leader Ms. Marlene MacDonald, my former Cabinet colleague and current Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, Mr. Colin Imbert, Deputy Chairman of the Diego Martin Corporation, Ms. Kathy Christopher, who had her maiden speech on a platform right here in Diego Martin when she was a little girl. Wouldn't tell you how old she is, but she's grown up now. Right here in Four Roads in Diego Martin, she started out as a youth speaker on the PNM platform. And of course, I would like to recognize my predecessor, Mr. Hugh Francis, who is here with us tonight. And I also want to recognize the person who joined me up in the PNM. Because I was joined up in the PNM. In Tunapuna, Party Group 7, Pearl Charles. There's Miss Pearl Charles there, right? Started in the East, and they say wise men came from the East. So if the wise men came from the East, they're going somewhere. I must end up in the West. But welcome, Ms. Pearl Charles. And I acknowledge, coming all the way from San Fernando tonight, our other Deputy Political Leader, Mrs. Joan Yule Williams. And we have with us our Lady Vice Chairman, Mrs. Camille Robinson Regis, and our Party Industrial Relations Officer, Mrs. Jennifer Baptiste Primus, and our Welfare Officer, Mrs. Jocelyn Bodden, and all our party officers, councillors, chairmen, my parliamentary colleagues, we're all here in Diego Martin tonight. Welcome to Diego Martin. The election campaign is well and truly underway. And this is going to be one of the most interesting campaigns I've ever had to take part in. Because this campaign is one where we're forced to respond to lies. And lies have a way of parading and playing themselves until truth reach. And once you could bring the truth, it's up to the electorate to choose. But let me begin by telling you something. One of the stalwarts of Trinidad and Tobago is a fellow called Professor Ken Julian, who doesn't need me or anybody on a PNM platform to defend him. If there is any citizen who owes this, if there is any citizen who this country owes a debt of gratitude, it is Professor Kenneth Julian. From bringing us into the light age with bringing tea and tech into what it became to provide us with power, he was there. Driving us to become an industrialized nation through Point Lisas, he was there. Using his intellect, not to enrich himself, but to develop the nation. All kinds of teams of people working under him, and they will all tell you, what a man. Respected abroad and in Trinidad and Tobago by those who know when respect is due. And at the university, he's raised a generation of young men and young women in the engineering faculty. He served on a board at ETEC and UTT. And when the government came into office, he was sued by the Attorney General, Anand Ramlogan, under the understanding that if you are a public officer and you make a decision which causes the state to lose money, you must pay out of your pocket. That was the mantra of the government of Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa, led by Anand Ramlogan, the Attorney General. Recently, the lawsuit against Professor Julian was settled in the court after 2 hours, because they went to court and said that under his chairmanship, UTT rented a guest house in a repo and rented that guest house to people, which resulted in them losing money, and Ken Julian must pay back $11 million to the state. Millions of dollars were made by lawyers prosecuting that matter, because the principle is, if you take a decision as a public official, you would have failed in your duty if that decision resulted in taxpayers having suffered any loss. So, when it went to the court, the evidence was such that the case had no merit, because when the books were shown that no loss was made, and in fact they were making a profit, the case collapsed. And taxpayers have to pay millions of dollars in lawyers and probably have to pay more for that kind of misadventure. But the principle remains the same. The principle has not changed. They might have lost that case, but the principle remains the same, because there are a number of other cases in the court where persons like Professor Julian, Wendy Fitzwilliam, and all others have been sued because they did something that caused us to lose money. Well, let's follow the principle. This country is still in the throes of a serious crime wave. The criminal element is still running riot in Trinidad and Tobago. And forget what the Prime Minister and her minions are telling you, there has been no improvement in the security of the people of Trinidad and Tobago between 2010 and now. None whatsoever. But one of the first things the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago did, and in case you don't know who the Prime Minister was then and who is now, it is Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa. One of the first things she did was to dismantle the security arrangements that were in place when she came into office. One of the dismantling involved the summary dismissal of Brigadier Joseph, who was head of an intelligence gathering special anti-crime unit. That action resulted in Brigadier Joseph having to settle for an out-of-court settlement, and the figure I am told, I have not seen the documents, I'm told that taxpayers would have been levied against to the tune of compensation, approximately $2 million, and lawyers, maybe another $2 million, for a single action of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. She just wanted him out, and she got him out and had to pay your money. The head of the SIA was a fellow called Mr. Clement, highly trained officer who came with a career of national security matters out of the Coast Guard into the SIA, providing us with the talent and the commitment that you expect. He and another 20 others were summarily dismissed, and they challenged their dismissal. Today I have been advised, that famous phrase, that the case for Mr. Clement has been lost by the state, and they are to return to the court for the court to determine how many millions you taxpayers will have to pay Mr. Clement for the actions of Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa. I want to ask Mrs. Bissessa tonight, the next time you go on a platform in Trinidad and Tobago and start screaming my name and my mother's name and my father's name and whoever else, I want you to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago, if the policy is still in place, that if a public official takes arbitrary action that costs taxpayers money, the person should be held personally accountable. And I want to ask the Attorney General Gavin Nicholas, take some time off between your truckloads of hampers in Devo Martin Northeast and tell us if you as Attorney General will pursue Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar for the millions of dollars she caused taxpayers on those two simple matters of malice and ill will. She took an oath of office as Prime Minister of this country, to treat fairly with all persons and to not treat with persons on the basis of malice and ill will. And she broke that oath of office. And you, the taxpayers, some of you who are not getting your pension this month, in Tobago, teachers can't get paid. But you could be paying millions of dollars for wrongful dismissal, action taken by the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago against persons who you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, train. You know them. Brigadier Joseph came out of the Defense Force with flying colors. Mr. Clement is one of the best officers in the business that he was in, but not for Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar. And that was only one. That's only one. And they want to talk policy. Well, the policy of the incoming PNM government is simply not to do that. Don't behave like that. That's a dramatic change of policy. And of course, they're running so far from their party name, from their party record, from their own personal behavior, from their own personal misconduct, that they're constructing an election campaign for you in 2015. So, this country has some problems that any government has to address. One of the main problems that is visible to you in Trinidad and Tobago is the national gridlock on all the roads in Trinidad and Tobago, all the major arteries in Trinidad and Tobago, from Diego Martin to Sangre Grande, from Coronage all the way to La Romaine. You have a traffic problem that is only getting worse. So it falls to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, whoever that government is, as part of their work program, as part of the solution to your problem, to fix that problem. The PLM embarked upon an attempt to fix it, which was to build in the country along the major east-west and north-south artery a mass transit system. But of course, like the Claude Noel Highway in Tobago, our political opponents didn't like it. Like Point Lisas, our political opponents didn't like it. Like Lapidco Industrial Estate, our political opponents didn't like it. Like Union Estate, they didn't like it. Like free secondary education, they didn't like it. But it's not what they like, it's what you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, want to solve your problem. And the PNM, as long as you want it and it solves your problem, it is the PNM's duty to solve your problem as the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So we embarked upon it. They said all kinds of things, all kinds of lies. We, on coming back into office, the problem is still there, getting worse, because with every shipment of motor cars into this country, it gets worse. We said, when you put us into office, we will re-engage the problem and we'll review the solution. And once we are happy that that solution, after review, is what you need to solve your problem, you have the PNM's commitment that it will be done. Yeah? Next thing I'm hearing, which is Kamla Prasad-Bissessar on platforms telling you that Dr. Rowley has done his review, and the review has shown it is $60 billion, and he must say where he's getting the money from, and it's a mad plan, and the rail is a rail to nowhere, and all kinds of nonsense. In fact, I'm told it's not nonsense, it's just plain, simple lie. I have done no review, and there's no figure of $60 billion. What I said is, on coming into office, because of how they behaved and badmouthed the project and put it on the track of cynicism, we will review it to make sure that you, the people, are satisfied that that is doable and is something we must do. And once the review says, yes, it's a go, then we go. That's what I said. But the lady wouldn't speak the truth even if... Anyway, she's talking about $60 billion. She should know. She should know, and maybe she knows something she's not telling us. Because this election campaign of 2015, she gets a village idiot to be walking about in the museum in front of the old train, caricaturing me, say I have a policy to build a rail to nowhere. Tell the people in Laramie and Deep South who want to come to Port of Spain, who take 5 hours to get here, tell them they're going nowhere. Tell the people in San Grande who want to go to Port of Spain, waking up in the morning at 3:30 to bring their children to school in town, they're going nowhere. Tell the people of Diego Martin who can have the benefit of a mass transit system into Port of Spain, going home and coming back at will, that is going nowhere. But let me tell you, let me point out to you the level of dishonesty that governs Trinidad and Tobago. I crave your indulgence tonight to do what I don't normally do when I'm engaging you in these gatherings, to read to you. I brought you some documents. Let me read for you so you could understand who Kamla Prasad Bisesa is, who the UNC is, and as Lloyd Best would say, to understand that them is people to watch. You see these 2 documents? These are not mine. Well, they're mine now. They're not PNM's documents. These are UNC documents. This one, Ministry of Transport. You know, there was never any Ministry of Transport under the PNM. There was always a Ministry of Works and Transport. First line in this document, Ministry of Transport, Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Note of advice in relation to the proposed light transit system from Citygate, Port of Spain to Arima, Phase 1. And listen carefully, people of Trinidad and Tobago. Those of you who are present in front of me, and those of you who are home, and those of you who were watching the UNC for the last 3 weeks, talking about how ridiculous it was, and it is, to consider a mass transit system to solve their problem. Introduction. The Ministry of Transport invited expressions of interest for a public-private partnership for the financing, design, construction, operation, and maintenance of a light transit system from Citygate, Port of Spain to Arima. The government now wishes to issue a request for proposals to all the entities which supported expressions of interest. The government has instructed Caribbean Legal and Project Advisory Limited, CLPA, to prepare the request for proposal. The project, as described in the expression of interest, the main objective of the project is to provide a mass public transportation solution on the east-west corridor to benefit approximately 150,000 persons who travel from East Trinidad into Port of Spain on a daily basis. It is envisaged that the transit system will be constructed approximately 4.2 meters above the priority bus route, reducing land use. A light transit system also has the benefit of minimal environmental impact. Let me go down to the other document and take you through the project schedule. Release of the RFP, request for proposal, October 8, 2012. Who was the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago then? Who was the government then? Initiated October 8, 2012. Receipt of acknowledgement form, October 15, 2012. Pre-proposal meeting, October 22nd, 2012, 10 a.m. Last day to submit questions, November 5th, 2012. Last day for clarifications, November 12th, 2012. Deadline for receipt of proposals, February 12, 2013. Mandatory compliance requirements, March 19, 2013. Evaluation and Selection Committee nomination of preferred respondent, March 26, 2013. Negotiations with preferred respondent, March 27, 2013. Recommendation of preferred respondent, April 26, 2013. Approvals, May 3rd, 2013. Notice to proceed, May 10th, 2013. And I want you to remember those two last dates, May 2013. So between 2012 and May of 2013, the UNC under Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar was quite happily proceeding along the lines of going to build in this country a mass transit light rail system for Trinidad as phase 1, Port of Spain to Arima. And I'm pretty sure the CPLA company that they mentioned in documents, they paid them because they were put in charge of the project. But then the whole thing came to a halt in May 2013. What happened in May 2013? In May 2013, the government collapsed. That was when Jack Warner broke with the government. The by-election came soon after. And your problem of transportation and the solution took a back seat. And for the rest of the life of the government after Jack Warner left, and the UNC splintered into a lame duck government, this issue, which was proceeding along the lines I just outlined there as a major government initiative meant to solve a problem which the PNM was advancing, which this government was pursuing, this went out the window. You became unnecessary, irrelevant. And what was important was the survival of the government. And in the meantime, the transportation problem remains the same and probably getting worse by the hour. But then the election comes around and the problem is still there. And they have the unmitigated gall to want to make it an election issue and pin it on me and have that idiot Rodney Charles telling you that I want a project for my ego. So it is my ego they were massaging in 2012 and 2013 when they were going down this road. And if it costs $60 billion, I don't know that. She knows that because she hired experts to proceed along this line. Madam, this is your document. Stop lying to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Lying will get you nowhere. You ask yourself, what manner of leader is this? Who knows that these documents exist? Who knows that you have done this? And you still think that you could fool the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam, as long as the PNM is here, you and the UNC will not be allowed to fool the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Many of you here in this gathering tonight came from Diamond Vale. Diamond Vale is one of the stellar housing projects in this country done by the People's National Movement. Houses sold down there for $13,000. Today you are millionaires, you own property down there. Say, thank God the state gave you that, otherwise you might never have owned a house in this country. And some of you have a habit of talking, what PNM do? PNM never do nothing, but the only asset you own and may never have owned another one you got from public policy under the PNM. Because it was their position. It was their position that the government has no right in public housing construction. That was their position up until recently. I had the opportunity to serve you as Minister of Housing in the period 2003 to 2007. And the government of Patrick Manning at the time, the same way we embarked on trying to solve the transportation problem, we also embarked on trying to solve the national housing problem, because there is one. And of course, we accelerated the housing construction because we did have significant revenue flows. It was a period of good revenues coming in. And we decided to treat with one of your main problems, which is, where do I live? How do I get into a proper house for myself and my family? And if the government keeps building houses, and this is not to say that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is undertaking or should undertake to provide a house for everybody who want one, you know. It is building for those who are least able to manage their affairs in this area, increase the housing stock. And those who qualify for HDC housing, then they have a supply coming as the government builds. Of course, they didn't understand that. They didn't agree with it until they discover you have to award contracts to build houses. The minute they understand that it was contracting that was done, because you know, in the early days under the NHA itself used to build the houses. But the rate at which they built them in the public service was very slow. When we went on this accelerated housing program, we said we would use the private sector to build, and the HDC would manage the constructors, so we could build thousands of houses. And we built, in the period I was there, going back to Martin Joseph, through Danny Montado and myself, we could have come for 21,000 housing units at various stages of completion. Some completed, some halfway completed, some quarter way, and some just started. And even the ones that they objected to, Fairfield Complex in Princestown now, when we got the approval to build that complex for housing in South Central Trinidad, they said we are carrying out social engineering and they want to bring Lavanty people in Princestown to dilute the votes that they own. Today, they are awarding contracts by the hundreds of millions of dollars to do the same thing. Because they realize that contracts are involved. Well, I can tell you, I have no middle name called Money in my name. None. There's one Minister of Government who is called Money Lal. And I want him to explain to us how he got that name. I ran that program from 2004 to 2007. 2003, 2007. And I could tell you without fear of contradiction, and my bankers will tell you the same thing, the same friends I had that I have now. And I could sleep well at nights. Without fear. Because there is not a contractor in this country who would dare come forward and say, when Rowley was Minister of Housing, I had to give him a what? To get a contract? You know why? I didn't deal with contractors. Contractors were dealt with by the HDC, and all contracting and evaluation and award of contracts took place there. No contractor was traipsing in and out of the minister's office. That wasn't the minister's work. As a matter of fact, I told that to one person who came to see me, and my secretary can bear it out. He came to see me on the basis of asking about a contract, and I directed him to the HDC, and he looked at me so stunned I lost a friend for life. The Ministry of Housing and the minister didn't get involved with contractors. That was the duty of the agency under the board. So I can't have no middle name called Money. And the most expensive house that was being built in my time, just recently, was $350,000. Today, the equivalent house is $700,000, $800,000. Right here this evening, if you turn your neck around, you will see the units here by 4 roads. You here in this part of the country, in Diego Martin, one of your main requests of the government of the day is to assist you in having housing, because the Diego Martin Valley is chock-a-block with housing. And when you look at the papers, the average price for a house is $1 million. The average young couple can't afford that. So I was your Minister of Housing, and right behind the fire station there were about 5 or 6 government quarters, dilapidated, unofficially occupied. Under my stewardship, we went and we got the people out who were there. We demolished those antiquated buildings that were housing 6 people, and we put up those towers there that will house many, many families. I started that as Minister of Housing. The last time I was Minister of Housing was 2007. You know, after 5 years of this government starting from scratch, they did everything else for you in Diego Martin. They steal your money. They interfere with your road project. They do. The one thing they didn't do was to finish those units, so that you, the people of Diego Martin, could be living in there. Right next door to Victoria Gardens, you would have remembered my meetings with the residents of Victoria Gardens when we said we were going to build Victoria Keys. Big issue. Opposing the minister, opposing the government, because we dared to build those towers and call them Victoria Keys. I was confronted by people asking me, why don't you call them Phase 4 and Phase 5 Powder Magazine? And I said, I like the sound of Victoria Keys. When I left that ministry, those towers were built. The cupboards were going in, the tiles were already in. That should tell you how far the construction had advanced. When the government changed after a period of nonsense with one of my predecessors, when the government changed, they embarked upon taking up all the tiles, changing the cupboards, and raising the quality to an extent where now the average person in Diego Martin will not be able to pay the HDC for those units. And the reason why they're not giving them out now and they slow the construction down, because they dare not come before you with what kind of price they want to ask for them. The last thing I heard, the minimum price was $800,000. That was built by the state to alleviate the housing shortage in Diego Martin and environs. And you're talking about $800,000 after you turn 2 bedrooms to 1 bedroom, 3 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms, and the same way they gave away the state land all over the country, they intend to give away those too. And they know who they're giving it to. You, the people of Diego Martin, unless you put the PLM back in office, not many of you will set your foot inside those towers there. Not many of you. You saw them go up. You saw me fight for you to put them there. That project cost millions of dollars. When I was at the HDC, we paid $44 million to cut that hill and transport the fill to create a $1 billion property in Movitown. So we spent $44 million doing that. The output was a $1 billion property in Movitown, reclaimed land. They gave away the reclaimed land. You realize that? Give it away. But let's see what's going to happen. And this is a government that is now telling you it's running on performance. Yeah, running on performance. Well, we have a Viagra for them. It is called the vote. Because you can't be suffering for housing like that. We can't be suffering for housing like that. From Patna to Carenage, from 4 Roads to St. James, and right behind the George Cabell Street, you have hundreds of units unfinished after 5 years. I had to move a squatter who had occupied that land behind the cemetery. You remember a fellow called Padilla, I think his name was Padilla, who had laid claim to those lands, their Port of Spain Corporation land. I had to lead that charge to remove one person who had claimed all that land. And if you pass there now, there are about 5 or 6 towers there, unfinished, largely unattended, while thousands of you are around. Your major request of the government of Trinidad and Tobago is to assist you with housing. And then, they believe that you're stupid. The houses that they had not touched for 5 years, come election, they engaged in this program, 100 units every week giving out. When I was Minister of Housing, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, I would invite the Prime Minister to hand out the houses as and when they were completed. We didn't have to wait for an election to play election game and election gimmickry with the housing you so badly needed. But they are so wicked. They held the houses there until the election season, hoping that they will distract you from the corruption that is the issue, and that they will offer you a house for which you haven't qualified. And after the election, they will tell you you ain't qualified. Because if you call all the names by way of lottery, will you get a house in the lottery before the election? You got the key yet? And when they tell you how much you have to pay, and you can't pay it, what's going to happen? But by that time, the election would have come and gone. And there are many heartbreak stories to come from those persons who think they got a house. And to treat poor people like that is wicked. Absolutely wicked. Imagine a woman on television, on paper saying they call her and tell her come down for the draw. And of course, when she goes along, of course, her name called, she get a house. What's the cost of the house? She doesn't know. Do you qualify? And worse, they now put the program largely, the people who got house under the PNM, they went to them and tell them, you have to pay for the house now, and if you can't pay now, go to the public bank. And it is not by accident that the major brochure that they're campaigning on has on the cover the picture of the head of Republic Bank and the Prime Minister. Because all of a sudden, the HDC is sending people to Republic Bank to borrow money to pay HDC for the houses that they were occupying on more gentle terms. When Terence Dalton, who is here from St. Joseph, when he called and inquired about the terms in the bank, they were onerous to the average person in Trinidad and Tobago. And you have to ask yourself, what happened to the ease of access to housing through the Home Mortgage Bank and TTMF that was there before? What happened to that? This government is bypassing that and going into the commercial banks on conditions known only to them. And when I went and I asked the bank, how come you were chosen and no other bank? You wouldn't like to hear the answer I got. But the bottom line is the policy has changed. So let me tell you here tonight, that tower behind the police station, that was the PNM's dream of housing some of you in this area. Those towers, Victoria Keys, that was the PNM solving some of your housing problems. Those towers behind the George Cabell Street Cemetery, that was the PNM dream, because housing is a major priority for some of you, and the PNM's record stands without blemish. Housing from Canaan in Tobago to Charlottesville to Carenage to Lance Park to Pleasantville to Point 14 to Sangre Grande, all over this country, the PNM has built and helped people to own and access property and housing. And that is where they want to come to try to score political points, like they make we out. We are the PNM. We are the PNM. In San Fernando, one of our housing towers was burnt down. What, 3 years ago? Past there. Same way, untouched. All that was required was to hire a contractor to go in and refurbish this tower. Untouched. Untouched. So they want to take us on the mass transit. They lost that. They want to take us on education, where they lost that doubly. They want to take us on housing. They lost that too. And we want to take them on corruption. They lost that too. And you know, they have a habit, all of them, about Rowley and fit, and Rowley and fit. Well, I've been with you in public life since 1980. Hugh Francis will tell you, in 1980, in the first THA election, I was a youth speaker. In 1980. I've been in this parliament since 1987, January. I've held a number of portfolios. I've held managerial responsibility in state enterprises and in the university. My record is something that they could only dream of, and you can't touch that. So when Vasant Bharat links up with the town idiot to talk about me not being fit, I want to ask Vasant Bharat tonight. I hear you coming to run in St. Joseph against Terence Dal Singh. I want to ask him tonight, if a person who is a minister of government finds himself in a house in my neighborhood and the house on the market for $20 million, and you come and negotiate the price, and after you've done that, a contractor pay for the house, if that person is fit to be a minister of government, a member of parliament, or prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to answer from Vasant Bharat, because he seems to know all about who fit and who not fit. But we don't pick our fitness like that. We pick our fitness through service, potential, and an abiding commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And this election, we're talking about issues. The issues in this election are crime, corruption, and a lack of competence. Those are the issues. And we will dictate what issues we address. And no idiot in a suit in Belmont Bar Street corner will dictate to the PNM what the issues are. The issue is that our potential has been destroyed by Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her cabal. Imagine, after the PNM presents Stuart Young, Terence Dal Singh, Nicole Olivier, Darrell Smith, we virtually have revamped our lineup because we had to. We were decimated in 2010. And while some of our members were a little aggrieved at not being put up front, but as captain of the ship, I had to make sure that the ship was seaworthy, because when the storm comes, I got to know which way is up. And we have presented one of the best lineup of young people accepting responsibility for the future of Trinidad and Tobago. And listen to Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa. It's the same PNM, it's the same people. I don't know why she doesn't stay out of PNM business. The woman's term of office expire, God knows how long. I could have stayed in office until 2017, unchallenged, because I had a 5-year term, and next year is local government election, no party election. The next time there have been a party election is 2017. So I could have sat as leader of the PNM unchallenged until 2017. Unlike her, I didn't do that. I gave up the 5th year of my term and put the vacancy up to the one man, one vote within the PNM. And then she comes out now and is announcing last night that they announced 4 new candidates. And in case you didn't hear her 4 new candidates, let me tell you now. Rudal Munilal, Timotheus Gopi Singh, Ganga, Pipeman is Jerry Hadid's father, right? That's a man we respect. Ganga Desalination Singh. Ganga Short Pants Singh. And of course, the queen of the circus, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, who, when she was asked in that show they had at CNMG, that they pay people to come and ask the Prime Minister questions, when she was asked, tell us why you selected Reshmi Ramnarayan, She said it was an administrative error. And we fixed it. Administrative error that they fixed. My memory is still very good. I remember when I raised the Reshmi Ramnarayan appointment, Mrs. Kamla Prasad Bisesa launched an attack on me, accusing me of not liking women, particularly young women, not liking Indian, not liking young people. That was the response. And it moved from there to an administrative error. Well, people of Trinidad and Tobago, I'm from Mason Hall in Tobago, and we have a saying up there. And if you wait until sun go down and darkness come in to take bully faith to go and see what outside the zombie take you. Right? You pass these people with a record like that, who even in their dying days in political life in the country, they can't tell you the truth. Even when the documents are there with their own stamp on it, they behave as though it didn't happen. And they somehow believe that you will fall for a food card and a plastic bag with some peas and red bean and broken macaroni. I say to you tonight in the Martin Northeast, any of you who vote for Gavin Nicholas on the basis of a hamper, you deserve Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Gavin Nicholas. And we, the children of slaves and indentured workers, must know that the way to our dignity and our self-respect cannot pass through our stomachs. And you telling me the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, facing allegations and not responding, that he's walking through a constituency in an election handing out food cards? A food card is cash. The laws say it's illegal to offer inducements for election purposes. That's the law. And you know who's accused of doing that? The Attorney General. But why are you surprised? They lock up Jack Warner for money he shouldn't have, according to the stories. And who got Jack Warner's money? The Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. And he is in the case making decisions on Jack Warner. And as far as he's concerned, he is not going to engage Jack Warner. Gavin, you engaged Jack Warner already when you took the man money. What we want you to do now is to disengage yourself from the case, because Jack Warner is a wily man, you know. Have you all observed that Jack Warner is saying nothing about that? You know why? When the matter comes to the heat in the court, any 2x4 defense lawyer will raise that and say that the matter has not been properly adjudicated upon because the Attorney General has acted improperly in the matter. That is part of Jack Warner's defense. And of course, we gave them their 5 full years. And we said to them, anything that you bring to the parliament that is in the interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, you have our support. And we have the record now as an opposition to have supported more government bills in the parliament than any other opposition in Trinidad and Tobago. We also told them, if you bring something that is detrimental to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we'll oppose it. And we stand by that. We stand by that. And after 5 years, and this 3-month period, where they're running the country dry, awarding contracts left, right, and center, spending money left, right, and center with their sticky fingers. They want you to believe that what you experienced in the last 5 years, an election day will come and you will pass up the opportunity to remove them and allow them to continue for another 5 years. They think you're stupid. They believe that you who experienced all those days and nights when you wanted to get them out of office but you couldn't, that the election would have come and you will stay home because rain fall, or you ain't see Rowley long time, or you ain't like how Wimbledon does look. They believe that you will vote on that basis and they will continue. I have confidence in all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is that confidence that tells me once the election is held on the 7th of September, you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, will save yourselves from Cabal 2. We had Cabal 1. They were offering us Cabal 2. We had Disaster 1. They were offering us Disaster 2. What did we do to deserve this? We, the people, gave them an opportunity and they failed miserably. And the only thing they succeeded in doing is to enrich themselves out of the public purse. And that comes to an end on the 7th of September. So tonight, I say to you here in Diego Martin, I say to you here in Diego Martin West, in Diego Martin Central, in Diego Martin Northeast, you have 3 candidates, 2 experienced ones, one in the west and one in the east, and the baby in the middle, protected by us. And on September 7th, we have absolutely no doubt that the first shout of victory in this election in 2015 will come from the west, from Diego Martin West, from Diego Martin Central, from Diego Martin Northeast. And we who have experienced the same thing that others in the country have experienced, that sense of liberation on the 7th of September will sweep from east to west, from north to south, and on Sunday we start the sweeping in Tobago. And let me end on this note, in case you all didn't hear, because tonight I feel like a tongue crier tonight. All you hear vanilla going back up in Tobago? I'm going to Tobago on Sunday for the PNM rally. What should I say to Vanilla when I get to Tobago? Okay, I hear you. We wish her well. But that gives you an idea of what is going through the minds of people in the political arena outside of the PNM. As Mr. Imbert would say, all of them mad. All of them mad. But we're not dealing with that. We are dealing with the management of your affairs. We are dealing with your problems and solutions to those problems. And we are dealing with morality in public affairs and competence in office. We ready? We ready? The PNM is ready. And on September 7th, we all will join together with the triumphant shout, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.
Yeah, we're ready.